good evening. How are we this evening on this Wednesday, the 10th of December? I think. I don't know. Didn't get myself an advent calendar. Hope you're all right. What was I going to say? No idea. Right. So, good evening, Carol. Hello there. Right, there's a few of you. Hi, Maria. Maria, did you get the message with the document in? Let me know. Or was it okay? Right, so going to be focusing on a stamp set tonight, but a few of you got these in your advent calendars and it confused you, so I'm going to do a couple of little demos with those so that you can see what they're all about. But we will be playing mainly with one of the Butterfly Kisses stamp sets. It's a DL stamp set and it's going to be on Hobby Maker next week, whatever the 18th is. I think that's a Thursday. Oh, I don't know. I have no idea what day of the week it is. All makes sense. Right, hello Evie. Right, in which case, ignore that comment, Evie. I said nothing, okay? Don't go looking. Or it'll spoil the surprises. So let's make a start. I'm going to flip my camera around to there. So this is the stamp set we're going to be playing with. It is sort of a fashion-y type one. I love this panel here. So much to do with. You've got very sort of pretty. She does have, to me, she's got a bit of a Kate Winslet arriving at Titanic feel with that big hat. You've got some nice sayings, and then you've got some really handy little ones, these little circles and little dots and things like that. So really nice, sort of a bit of pattern building, nice little swirl there. And if anybody's seen the film Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, when you just Haute Couture, just makes me think of that film, which I really love. So we'll have a little play with this and incorporate those things from the advent calendars. Hello Gail, hello Elsbeth. Right, I'm just going to start very simply and just show you how lovely this big stamp is here. Just keep it nice and simple. I don't know what that card is I've grabbed, because it is a fabulously big background stamp, so it's really easy to create like a collage panel, and really good for using on top of your waist knot, want knots and things like that. So it is just really lovely. It's just a panel with lovely words on. So I'm not going to do it side by side perfectly, just because I think that's going to give it a little bit more interest by rotating it round. I wouldn't go upside down, I'd keep them all going in the same direction. But you can see how easily you can create a bit of a sort of a designer paper going on here. And because it's nice and square, it's easy to tile, and there you've got a really nice collagey style that we can then put a little topper onto, you know, in the middle there. It just gives a really interesting, it's sort of got a bit of a graphic 45, and you imagine if you didn't do that just straight on there, if you did a bit of colouring and stuff with it first. So let's do some quick inking. Very interesting array of colours here. This is what happens when you don't change your oh, wilted violet. So wilted violet and wild honey, because you know crushed olive is it's okay, but it's not the best. Right, so let's have a little bit of, oh, that's the trouble with this sort of card. Right, let's have a bit of wilted violet. And let's come in with some wild honey, which anybody that knows me knows this is one of my go-tos when you want to add a bit of warmth to something. It's just really lovely. And I think with the wilted violet, it's kind of got a sort of a fruit salady feel. Let's put some more wild honey on there. Let's get it quite nice and bright. Okay. What have I got? Oh, barn door. Let's add some barn door in as well. just to, that's better. The thread will become apparent shortly. So let's redo that collage idea over the top of a colour as well, but what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to start off the page, so it's just going to give a more interesting sort of movement to it, because that's going to fit in there. It's just really fun, and I know it's sort of fashion related, but it doesn't have to be. It's only if you read the words carefully. But if you did this in a more subtle way, or press the stamp actually down like I'm about to do, you know, you've just got these lovely panels that are just really easy to use. And although you've got the stamp there, if you have got some vintage dress pattern pictures and things like that, you could use that with there as well. Okay, right, I am going to just clean this off a little bit, just because what I'm about to do with it I could ideally do with a cleanish stamp. And I probably, yoga ran late, that's fine. Sarah, I loved your little house. If you're not in our group, our Stamps Away group, join it and you'll know you've found the right group, because it's got Sarah's beautiful little house from the advent calendar as the current photo. It's really cute. Right, so that's clean. I'm going to come in with a fresh piece of card and pot of Vaseline. Not even Vaseline, it's Asda's own. So I'm going to load up my sponge with some, and then I'm going to smear this across my stamp. Okay, so just as if it was ink, and by swiping it across we are applying a thin coat of the Vaseline, but we're not overloading it. And then we're going to repeat this stamping, and I'm hoping I'm not going to have to Vaseline. I think I'll get away with it. You might have to. I know you can't overly see that there. I will just put a little bit more on just to make sure. But it really doesn't take very much of the Vaseline. And the reason I keep my sponge for the Vaseline in the Vaseline is so that I don't accidentally pick that up and do something else with it. Right, so can you see that there is a faint impression on there? Right, let's come in with some barn door. And this is what I was saying about a subtle use of this stamp to create backgrounds. And can you see the Vaseline acts as a resist, but not a huge. So the first generation, really crisp. The second and third generations, more subtle. So that gives a really nice aged vintagey look. But I always find with this particular technique, so although that looks fab like that and you've got that nice washed out look, if you come in with another colour over the top, and Julie's late as well, that's fine, you're all allowed to run late, it's December. This sometimes makes it pop even more, because as you apply another colour, it almost cleans it off where the Vaseline is. And you see how you get a really interesting background there. So, same colours, but a stark contrast to that. Much more subtle backgroundy with this using the Vaseline. But how fabulous is that? And it just gives a really nice... You could then overstamp it with your Versamark. No, not Versamark, Versafine Clair, because you've worked that ink in. The Vaseline shouldn't act as a resist over the top. But I always love that. And I tend not to do that technique with stamps very much, because if it's a very subtle line one, like the lady's face, I find that it's not contrasting enough. But something like that with the block of word, there's a lot of stamp there, so it works quite nicely. Okay, so that's that one. Right. Let's have a little play. No, I'm going to stick with this stamp. You coming around here, Marvy Moo? Hello, darling. You all right? Right. Right, bear with me. I just got to unplug the heat gun and plug in an iron. Oh, scandalous. Right. Okay, I'm only really sort of inking up the stamp here so that it will give it a little bit more oomph. Right, not that bit. There. I got a fabric sample book yesterday, and there was this sort of velvety material in it, and I thought, that's perfect. So I'm just going to cut it down a tiny bit. That's a nice size bit, because I might want to fray this and stuff. And then I am going to spritz this with some water. The fabric, okay, so I want it wet. And then I'm going to lay this on top of my stamp, and then I am going to use a bit of tissue between my between my iron and the fabric, only because I did it earlier and there was a backing on the fabric and it stuck to the bottom of the iron. Don't panic, it is my craft iron, but it is a little bit mucky at the moment. Right, and then I'm just going to apply pressure. I'm not going to, because it's got that gunk on it, I'm not going to run the iron around in the normal traditional way, because it's got that sticky gunk on. Okay, so just applying the pressure. Now, this is fine for these stamps. This is fine for rubber stamps. But what you can't do this with is silicone ones, because they are formed by heat, not a chemical reaction with UV light, which is what these stamps are. And then what you get is a beautiful, can you see that impression into the fabric of that lovely background stamp? Isn't that lovely? And I just think this sort of stamp onto fabric adds an extra interesting layer to it. So you don't have to ink up the stamp. You can just do it purely with the pressure. But I just think putting a little bit of ink into there just highlights it a little bit more, especially on that subtle background there. Right, I'm going to quickly swap to my heat gun again. Oh, hi, Marv. All right, babes. You tired? Don't make too much noise. Marvin's tired. Right. Okay. Oh, what was I going to do on that? So, no. Let's do, while we've got the fabric out and this stamp, I'm going to swap stamps in a minute. Right, this is a bit of recycled silk. I'm going to cut it a bit smaller, and then I would fray this and things. But for now, I just want to show you. Right, Versafine Clair. And I am going with the black just because I want it to show up. Stamp down. And then I'm going to come in with black embossing powder, if I can get the lid off before that dries. So you have to work a little bit quicker with fabric than you do with paper, because obviously it's going to soak in a little bit there. Right, hygiene. Right, here we go. So I'm going to just move my iron because that's hot, but move it in such a way that it's not near the dog's nose, who's sitting by my feet. And then I'm going to heat set this. So be careful with what fabrics you do this with, because obviously if it's a fabric a bit nylon-y, it won't take the heat, in which case just stamp on it. And I don't mean stamp with your foot, I mean. But I just want to heat set this. Obviously this wouldn't be suitable on clothing. This is for journaling, journal covers and things like that. Cards. But I just want to heat set it so that the ink will stay a little bit better. It's a bit harder to tell on fabric when your embossing powder has actually turned, because unlike on card where it goes shiny, on fabric what it's tending to do is soak through to the other side, because obviously it becomes a liquid. So we're just wanting to make sure that it has melted in some way or other. But as it's coming through to the other side there, I would say that's pretty much done. And then you've got a lovely panel, which I say on the fabric you can start to fray the edges, and that's just going to look really nice on a card, in a journal. It's got that kind of clothing label feel to it. So using fabric instead of paper just gives a really nice look, more tactile, and very appropriate for this stamp set. Right, so I think we're going to swap that stamp out now for a minute. Hessian, what you've got to remember with Hessian is it's a looser weave. So this isn't actually Hessian, but I've got something similar. It's a looser weave and more textural. So what will happen is you won't get as crisp an image. You will still get an effect, but what will happen is it will be much more blocky, and it will have, see how it's only taken to the top layer because you're going under and over. So you see, you're just losing a lot of it. If it was a tighter, like a jute bag, it would, obviously you'd have more detail there, but it still wouldn't be ideal, because if you think about how textural that is, this is a very smooth fabric. Okay, so that's why you get a nice crisp image with it. But something like jute or Hessian, you're going to get this kind of, where it's not taken to all, you know, if you look there, it's only taken to the top layer, if you know what I mean. The bits going underneath, I can't remember if it's the warp or the weft, but that kind of idea. Right, but good question. Right, what was I doing? Change the stamps. Right, let's keep it nice and simple, and then, how's it 20 minutes already? Right. So I'm going to do one of my favourite little techniques, just because I think she's really pretty and she doesn't need much. So glue stick smear, gilding flake, just a pinch, and then sort of flick it around so it's spread about a bit, and then just try and only press down at this point, not rub, okay, because we want to get the gilding flake onto the glue. So even if you need to sort of pick it up with your finger, or even turn it over and press like that, so it's picking up the bits there. Once it's, actually that's quite effective, once it's pressed down nice and firmly into the glue, you can then take your soft brush and work off the little bits of excess. Now I would never put those back into the pot. Okay, generally you can sort of work them into anywhere where the glue is missed, but because they're starting to ball up at that point when they've been worked off like that. So you can save a little pot to mix them into other things like handmade paper or something like that, but don't put them back into your pot of gilding flake. It just spoils your pot. But if you are flicking them on the floor, mind the sleeping dog. Now, if you're worried that your glue is still a little bit tacky in places and you've missed it with the gilding flake, you can, the weft goes from weft like that. I'm likely to remember that, gal. You know me so well. I like that. Oh, hang on. I had a miss out there. Did you see that? It's fallen on my stamps. This can be a bit of a pain. And this is why you always put the lid back on your embossing powder. Should be okay. Right, let me just tidy up this disaster area here. I mean, to be fair, it could have been a lot worse, but it's just the bit that fell on the stamps that's a pain. And I've also just dropped some gilding flake in my black embossing powder. There we go. Right. But what I will do while I've got my blusher brush, I've just given those stamps, and I think that's got rid of most of the embossing powder that fell on them. So not a complete disaster, just annoying. Right. This is our lovely lady. So stamp her over. Before I threw my embossing powder, I was going to say if you needed to dust your card with some talcum powder or corn flour or an anti-static bag to make sure all the glue was covered. But because I've done the thing with the brush, pretty much any stray bits will have stuck to the glue, so there's no danger with the embossing powder. But throw on your embossing powder, tip off the excess, and then heat set it. And again, just keep an eye because we are working on an unusual surface. So I'm tilting that so I can see. And depending what the glue is that you've used, you might spot the odd bit of bubbling under your gilding flake. If you've used like PVA or a flitter glue or something like that, you might find that you get a little bit of bubbling. Not a big problem. Right, and then in the stamp set, we've got these lovely swirls and things like that. But I was going to use my little dotty ones, and I'm going to be naughty and just use my finger as an acrylic block, because they're quite small, and if you try and put them on a big acrylic block, it wobbles and it can just be a little bit more, whereas your finger works just as well. And then we're going to have the little spotty ones just in the corners here, just to give a little bit of interest. I think that'll do. Don't think that'll fit. Oh, my thumbnail's split back and it's quite sore. Oh, that would have fitted, but yeah. So using the using over the to be fair, my dogs sort of keep my vets on their toes, because we do get things like he's been bitten by a snake. Yeah, we don't go in with just normal things. Right, so that was the gilding flake. What was the other one I wanted to show with that one? Oh, that's right. Let's move into these things. I'm going to work with this. Now, some people would have got the one that looks like a Christmas bauble, but the idea is the same. You have back panels and you have, they just twist out, keep the backboard. So this one dismantles into all these different bits. And then these act as frames for if you need to use the handle of something just to get that one out. The middle one's always a bit harder because I can't get my fat fingers in there. Right, so these are frames that go round there. So you're creating a little tray. And then the other sizes will fit on to... What's the one for that? I don't know. Suppose you could use that one. Maybe we just put an extra layer in. Yeah, we must have done. Just use that as a little frame. Just cut a piece of board to go on the back of that one. So let's create a little frame for our beautiful lady. Let's do it like she's Kate Winslet and she's leaving it for Cal. Not quite the picture she left for Cal, but you know. Right, I want something a bit agey. Yeah, I think I'll go there. So if I go there, why do I keep tidying up? Somebody stop me. Angel hair. Do you mean Angelina? Angelina comes in sort of one colour packs. Oh, that's fine. I just wanted it aged a little bit. Right. So I'm going to put a bit of glue on that and stick that behind. I'm going to hold it up to the light so I can see. That'll do. And then quickly cut that out. I could have drawn around this first, then stamped on it, but where's the fun in that? Right. Okay, and then it's going to have the little frame that goes around that. So what we will do is we will gold up that frame bit first. And I'm just going to use a gold ink. And the reason I'm not going to use an embossing powder is because I'm going to glaze that little picture. So if I used an embossing powder, it might melt as I'm doing this. So I'm just giving that a little gold. Okay, just a bit of gold ink. I'm going to glue that on. And then I'm actually going to use this as almost like a tray to catch the clear embossing powder in so I can get a thicker layer of it. I mean, you could just leave it like that or use like a glossit or something like that to go in, but I'm going to use clear embossing powder. So I need to get my, so you can just sprinkle some embossing powder in there and literally melt it in there. That can blow about a little bit, but we are going to put in some clear ink wherever my clear ink pad is. No, it's not there. How can I lose? Honestly, I get the stuff out ready for the workshop and then just it vanishes. It was upside down and it was under here. No idea. Absolutely no idea. So we're going to have to improvise. What have I got? Oh, the glycerin's downstairs. I just want something that my embossing powder is going to stick to. Normally you would use clear ink, but I don't. There it is. Why did I put it there? Right. So. Okay. hate doing that because it gets on your fingers and it's all... Could you show us how you use the acrylic shapes 1 week, please? I have a cute penguin, but not sure what to do with it. Did you see Sarah's Northern Lights? But they're just for sort of putting pattern paper. My favourite way of using them is putting pattern paper on them, finding a nice Christmassy pattern paper, covering the cutting his little belly out in a different colour, and they look quite cute like that. I think I've somewhere got one of the dangly ones done like that. I will have a look. I'll see if I can. Right, so first layer of clear embossing powder, and then we're just going to heat set it. You see it starting to go. Just make sure that you're getting it all, because we're actually going to build this up to be quite glassy. So in with another layer. And the reason I do it while the outer frame is on is just so that I'm not creating a layer of embossing powder between the base layer and the frame that's going on, and it will also sort of capture it a little bit. As I say, you could fill this with you know, crystal lacquer, resin if you've got it. I'm an old-fashioned girl, so I do tend to have more of the embossing powder type solutions. This will be my last coat, and then we'll have this lovely little glazed picture. I mean, you could even just put acetate over it and sandwich it. But then you've just created a lovely little framed piece there that would go on your card. It just looks a little bit nicer than a flat image. Okay, so that was the framey ones. But yeah, Angelina, yes, we have it. It's not in mixed bags. I say they're in single colours. But yeah, we've got the Angelina, we've got the Crystalina. Right, let's go to these ones, because a few people got these style. Now these, again, you could just do paint pours onto them and make pendants. You could use your mop-up sheets and just cover them with paper and they would look really cool. But I really like using them with embossing powder. So I'm going to swap my stamp out for a second. To be fair, we might go back to our favourite wordy one. I do need to just remember to ink it up, just so I don't forget. Okay, then I'm also going to ink up my MDF. Give it a good old smear into there, and we are going... Yuck. I really do. I don't like that. Of all the things, that's the one thing I don't like on my fingers. Right, we're going to come in with gold embossing powder. Okay, tip it off. Back into the pot. Heat set it. And we're going to do this a few times until we've got some nice thick layers. If you've got ultra thick embossing powder, it works even quicker. But I've only got fine embossing powder here. Okay, just getting it going. Okay, one layer. Keep it warm. And the nice thing with MDF is it holds the heat. So that if you're a cautious embosser and you're worried about doing this with just heat, it will stay hotter for longer. But on the same note, if you want to let it cool down and just re-ink between layers, you can do. And gradually what will happen is you'll get a thicker layer of embossing powder here. Okay, I'm going to warm that up. Keeping it warm. Right, this time I'm coming in with a sparkly silver just to give this more interest. And there's nothing that says you have to use the same colour embossing powder on every layer. There is no rule that says that. This has got a glitter in it, so this will be slightly different. But actually let it melt into the gold. Okay, you can see we're getting, oh no you can't, 'cause heat gun's over the top. Right, I'm going to start doing pinches now. And you know it's staying warm because you can see it almost melting as it hits. Also turn your heat gun down to the slow speed, gives you a fighting chance. Just sprinkles now. Okay. Right. Get it nice and warm. And I'm coming in with some black now. Just little pinches just to give it a more sort of aged look. Not a full coating. Just giving it a little bit of zhuzh. That's not even a word. Right. So what we've got now, right, if I'm going to learn anything from tonight, it's put the lid on your embossing powders. 1, 2, 3. So what we've got now is all these lovely colours. And you could just leave it at that stage if you wanted to. You've got that real interest and they've got the hole in, so you can make little pendants, you can make little dangly bits to go on cards and in journals. It's just a really nice, but we're going to go one stage further. So my stamp is ready. We're going to warm this up. And by having the mix of colours on there, you can see when it starts to get warm, because it will start to move about. Can you see that sort of actually moving about? So we know that that is warm. Heat gun off and lay your stamp in it. And I say lay the stamp in because it's very easy to think you've got to press hard because you're pressing into embossing powder, but it's actually liquid at this point. So if I press in too hard and it's liquid, I'm going to push the whole lot off, and you don't want that. So you count to 10, let it cool and set around it, and then you just release it and you get the fabulous texture embedded into your embossing powder, and then you've got a one-off embellishment to add to your cards. You know, you could make them into jewellery as well, or just, you know, add it to a ribbon. You've just got something much more interesting than a normal embellishment. And you can do that with any of these. You know, you've got some real fun to have with those. So that's how you use those. And right, okay. What else was I going to do? Oh yes, so that was covering those. Right, let's do one of our little collage pieces. I'm gonna step down away from black, and I'm going to go to my morning mist because I want this to be quite subtle. So ink up my big background stamp, and I'm going to sort of do that offset from there, so that that lovely panel of colour that I created earlier, so nice and subtle, but you've got it sort of going off. Maybe do another one down here, I don't know. I might do. Maybe like that, so it's a bit on it, bit off it. Yeah, like that. And then I'm going to use some of the swirls and things like that just to start pulling bits out from that main panel. So we've got some swirly whirlies. Just like we normally do, creating a little bit of sort of a collage-y. Oh, it's the trouble when you leave it in the spiral bound. You get to the top there and you can't fit your acrylic block in. So just very simply, no, I'm going to have to swap him to the other side. I like leaving it in the spiral bound, but it does cause me more difficulties. Okay, let's add in our, I like these dots. They're those little, you know, when you just need a something stamp, they're one of those. But obviously you could do whole patterns, and it would be really nice for that sort of 1960s style of Christmas paper. I'll do that in a minute. Okay, what have we got? This is kind of a nice one. That would be a really good antenna for a butterfly. There, so we've got that nice interest, and then all we're going to do is we're going to stamp our lovely lady. If she didn't have a mucky back to her stamp, don't know how that happened. There is embossing powder on literally everything. How did I do that? What? Right, so the panel of colour, this blob here, I did it earlier so it was dry. I poured some ink out. I'd sort of splattered it about my finger, puffed it a bit, and then I laid another piece of paper on the top, a more absorbent piece to mop away a mirror image, and then it didn't leave it too thick. But it was a mica spray that I'd actually added some of the gold ink to give it a little bit more oomph. Probably should have stamped her in the black so she's a bit more dominant, but she'll be fine. So cutting her out and remembering to cut just outside the line so that we're not losing any of the lines. And obviously at home you would wait for the ink to dry so that you're not going to smudge it with your fingers. To be fair, I should have embossed her. Might be too dry now, but might not be. Nope, not at all. She's going to look like she's got the pox. I didn't anti-static because I'd already stamped it. No, obviously I could brush off the odd speck. Oh, that's going to make her really pop there, isn't it? Except obviously she has got those. And the reason I've got so much embossing powder this time is because my fingers are quite sticky because I've been handling the ink pad. So it's just a little bit more So you would have dusted your card with your anti-static, your talcum powder, your corn flour, custard powder if you haven't got the others, and then stamped, and then you wouldn't have got the stray bits. We're going to add that to there, but she's quite small, so although she is popping, I think she needs a saying as well to come along there. So let's be sensible this time. Let's dust it with talcum powder. Makes it smell nice as well. And then we're going to swap to one of the sayings. What's that one? Wishing you an elegant birthday. Especially for you. Celebrate in style. I like that one. And now when we come in with our embossing powder, it shouldn't stick to anywhere I don't want it to, because the talcum powder will have protected the surface. See, crisper. If you don't want talcum powder dust everywhere like that, put it into a little organza bag or something like that, or the end of a pair of tights. Got a sweepy brush. Have got a vacuum cleaner as well. Love a gadget. Heat set it. And then we're going to cut that. Let's cut it straight. Trimmer is on the floor, but you know, why use a trimmer when you could use a pair of scissors and mess it up? And then we'll, I don't know, will I tear it? Might curl the end. That's what I need. Just to sort of give it a sort of a slight ribbony feel. So just using a round stick, roll it backwards and forwards, so that will give it a nice curl. And we'll add that as well. I think I'm going to cut that and then just glue that onto there, and you've got a really nice sort of collagey, more modern twist on, again, a very traditional stamp set. So just because the imagery is more traditional doesn't mean you can't apply the nice collagey, mixed media-y sort of style cards that are very in at the moment. There you go, nice and simple. We've got our little collage page there. So it's very chic. Madame Chic, in fact. So let me think, have I covered everything that I wanted to? Oh no, I said about that, didn't I? Right, let's flick Madame Chic out of the way a minute, and let's just do a very simple idea with this. I might need something to help me guide this, or shall I just do it by eye? Oh, and then there's one other thing. Yeah, okay, we're fine. Right, I'm going to it's only problem when you use talcum powder. So I'm thinking sort of 1960s wrapping paper. Let's go with green. Sorry, as I say, when you're dealing with little stamps, it can sometimes be. I was just thinking of doing like a repetitive pattern. So it's almost like do you remember the sort of 1960s beaded curtain ideas? Now, I've only got a few ink pads here, but you could do some really nice repeating patterns just using this simple little stamp here, and it's just got that 1960s wallpaper. I mean, it would be great if you did browns and oranges, and you can just build up the little pattern there. And I would use the 3-dot one to take it level at the top there. You know, so you've got almost like a necklace idea, and then you could hang a bauble at the bottom there. You could just build up lots of little patterns with that. Right, so it was just a little idea with that one, but I don't want to lose those. Right, so last thing I wanted to show you, I just think the face, the lady's face in this has got that kind of lockety feel. So I just thought it would be really nice as if it was a found piece of art, sort of a lost love token kind of idea. So I've got some sea glass that I'd found and some sea pottery. Well, that's a piece of terracotta tile, I think. But I just thought it would be really nice to stamp onto those, so it would look like you found a lost treasure. So I've got the terracotta there, I've got some green glass, brown glass and clear glass. So I'm going to swap to the black VersaFine Clair. I'm going to start with the tile and sort of position her face in the middle, and then you just want to rock very slightly so that you're grabbing on all the surface, because it's an uneven surface, so just give a little wobble. And then if you wanted to do a little bit of coffee staining around the edge there to give it that sort of weathered look, or add a little bit of even pencil crayon there, just to add a little bit of colour, or maybe a little bit of white gesso watered down, just to add a little hint of colour. Let's do the white gesso watered down, and then even come in, let me, a bit of acetate. So I'm just going to add a bit of barn door to that. Just want it really watered down, so it's going to sort of soak in, and then the stamping should, as that soaks in, reappear, which it is. Add a bit of colour for her hat. Just, and if the stamping's not appearing as much as you want, just wet it a little bit and pull some of the white away with a piece of tissue. And then you've got that. If you've used your what do you call it, stamping platform, but it just looks like you found a piece of a lost portrait. How cute is that? Okay, so that's onto ceramic tile. The reason we can add colour to that is because it is unglazed. If it was glazed, you would have to stamp with something like a StazOn. The other thing to do, if you're worried about doing the colour and everything like that, and is stamp onto a piece of tissue and then glue that onto your, so this is the scruffiest piece of tissue because we've ironed on it and all sorts. But apply some glue to your tile. And then position it again. Press it down firmly and then just, I mean, I like the painted side, but this is an alternative. So you're almost decoupaging it. Really just work that in. If you wanted to put a little bit of glue on top as well, so it will almost give it a glaze, you can do. And then as that dries, it will go clearer. And then you've got, again, a found piece of treasure. And then last but not least, onto the sea glass. Now, again, you could do this onto tissue first, or you can just be brave and do it directly onto the glass. But again, this is shaped, so you just want to sort of roll it around so that it will catch in all the areas. And then you're just going to, you know, got that hint. Again, if you wanted to colour it with alcohol markers and things like that. If you're finding it hard to do the whole surface with the stamp on the acrylic block, do it the other way up so that you can see, you can actually see if it's contacting. And then you've got your little image, ignore the fingers, your little image on your piece of glass. And then you could put that into, set that into one of your little frames. Where's the little frames gone? Don't know, throwing them over here. So do a nice background, maybe black or something, and then set that into your little frame there. And it's like you found the lost portrait of Whistler's mother, if you watched Mr. Bean, the film. So, you know, don't limit yourself to card and paper. You can stamp onto other surfaces. You just might need to be a little bit more creative with them. Also, you know, experiment with glazing your images. Look at stamping into other things such as fabric. Explore using petroleum jelly as a resist, gilding flake, collaging, stamping into embossing powder, stamping onto fabric, tiling your images so that you can create your own background papers. There is so much you can do with a stamp set here. You know, there's not got a huge amount of stamps in it, but there's still plenty you can do. Oh, I did also do embossing onto the sea glass as well, so you can do that as well. So I hope you found that has got some ideas to keep you going. And, you know, there's, yeah, journals with maps, all sorts. Yeah, there's so many different things you can do. And the sea glass, you know, I collected quite a lot. I wouldn't necessarily go stamping on everything. If you decide, oh no, I didn't like it, get a bit of hand sanitizer, or if you think you've messed it up, get a bit of hand sanitizer, drop it onto your sea glass, give it a little wipe, let it sort of soak for a second, and then wipe it off, and miraculously the image has gone. So don't think that it's a permanent and you're going to ruin your sea glass if you mess up the stamping. You know, you can leave it there, or you can use, say, hand sanitizer is really good for getting your ink off. So hope you found that enjoyable, and it will have to be a pre-recorded next week, and I will get it recorded early on in the week, so I definitely get it done because next week I have got an uber busy week. 2 workshops at garden centres and Hobby Maker on the 18th at, I want to say 6 o'clock, but I will confirm that later. with Madam Chic and Faraway stamps on, plus other things. Unfortunately, they are not guaranteeing Christmas delivery for that, because the last posting date for Hobby Maker is the 16th of December. But I'll get something recorded for next week. Should be fine the week after that. The one between Christmas and New Year, again, I am going to do a pre-record. So it might be the one just before Christmas we do questions and answers type thing. Oh, I think 15th or 16th, not 100% sure. I've got Craft O'Clock with Adam, so that should be fun. But in the meantime, hope you're all getting on well with prep for Christmas, and look forward to seeing what you make with the advent calendars. If you get anything and you're not sure what it is, ask, because I can cover it. I will try and find something with the penguin. He wasn't actually one of our kits. We bought a lot of laser cut stuff from a company that closed down, with the idea for them going in the advent calendars. So he was an extra. He was an extra thing from there. So, but I'll have a little look at him, because I think it'd be nice if you did him black and then his belly had something like the Northern Lights or the trees from the Wolf set. I might do that. Right, maybe that's what I'll do for the pre-record next week. If I can find a penguin for me, because I'm not sure I've got any left. But yes, so in the meantime, I will see you. Well, I won't see you, but I will see you next week in some form or another. But in the meantime, take care, get creative, and I'll see you soon.